Hello guys, this is Feeding Frenzy 91. I'm bringing you some more Walking Dead character bios. This time we're going across the whole board and we're going to go to a character that I know most people didn't think were next. And that character is none other than our beloved Clementine. Why? Because she was technically the next one to leave the group because she left in episode 4. You first meet Clementine when you go to her house to look for food or whatever Lee's looking for. And of course, actually, technically, you first meet her when she's on the cliff and you're like, go get help. Technically, that was her, though you couldn't really see who it was. And it was really good how she went straight back to her treehouse when you said go get help because she was kind of afraid of you. She wasn't sure yet. Of course, that's revealed later on. And when you first meet Clementine, you think, all right, this is a kid I have to protect. Little do you know that this kid will act more like an adult than half the adults you meet in your group. But the thing about Clementine's character is that the game constantly says she's an adult, she's a kid. What I mean by that is they'll constantly have this moment where she seems more adult than like almost everybody else in the group. But then they'll have this moment where you're reminded that she's a kid, and they almost happen one right after the other. And I'll touch back on that later when I have more examples of such said. But I actually love how Clementine warms up to Lee so quickly in this game.
Honey, do you know this man?
Yes.
I mean, most people wouldn't have warmed up to someone strange. I mean, she clings to him during the whole first episode. I mean, she's not walking without holding his hand, even when he's not. She doesn't even know him. But I love how and Clementine is a pretty good judge of character based on how she judges character in the future upcoming episodes. But right now, she doesn't know Lee. And then in episode 1, I love how she's still, even though she's very adult-like, you can see how she is taking. She's very different from Duck. Let's just go with that, right? She is not Duck. And what also you can release, even though it doesn't really shine until episode 2, because in episode 1, she still seems like very clingy, kind of afraid of strangers, and kind of like, she's still a little girl. But when you get from, of course, after you leave Herschel's farm and you get to the real group, you once again have to protect Clementine from the thing in the bathroom. And once again, you're reminded that this is a little girl you have to protect. She may act like an adult, but she's not an adult. I did like this scene. Actually was very hard for me the first time I missed it because literally you're looking foggy and I'm not expecting that random thing, though obviously this is my first playthrough. And I love how Clementine just during that whole Duck thing, she kind of just remained silent because she was kind of like Duck, like I'm not getting involved in this. She's like, let the adults talk and I'll just go to the bathroom and pee. I do like that. That was pretty clever of her. Of course, during this when you take Clementine into the office and you are once again supposed to remember that this is a child you have to protect. Of course, that whole Band-Aid scene really shows that. But then she's very intuitive and can tell when you're evading a question.
Why don't you want to talk about your family? Do they, hate you?
I mean, most adults wouldn't have realized that Lee didn't want to talk about his family. I mean, the way he was talking, he was evading the question pretty thoroughly. Then, right after comes the Band-Aid scene to remind you that no, she's not an adult, even though she's very smart and intuitive. She's a kid. She's a little kid. You have to take care of her. Get her a Band-Aid, and then talk to her like you're a doctor or whatever Lee was trying to talk to her like. But then, during the whole zombies are breaking in scene, Clementine acts so calm, and she even just looks around. I mean, any other kid in that situation would just run away, but she looks around for the cane, and she finds it and brings it to you while the zombies are right there trying to break in. Of course, when you get to the motor inn, Clementine, once again, it shows the difference between Clementine and Duck. Duck is telling Clementine about monsters and superheroes, while Clementine is thinking about serious stuff like her parents. It just shows, I think if Clementine's parents had been here, then you would have had more of a kid Clementine rather than an adult Clementine, because I feel like since Duck's parents were here, he was kind of living the life, but with Clementine, her parents had been gone the whole time. I didn't like how they didn't allow you to tell whether her parents were dead or not during the first episode. In episode 3 is the first time you're allowed to tell her that they're dead. But by then she doesn't believe you because the stranger has already influenced her. I'll get to him later. But episode 1, I do love how it shows her adult side. Like, she's trying to remain strong, but she also realizes how serious this situation is. Unlike Duck, who is still talking about monsters even after Lee departs from the two. Anyway, let's go on to episode 2, which I will have almost nothing of, because Clementine doesn't have much in episode 2 other than asking Lee personal questions, like, is he going to have kids? Does he think the world will get back to normal? And also, with the whole car scene, which is my favorite. I never stole from the car, always agreed with Clementine, and I really did like how she was the moral figure through the whole game almost. She was like, through the whole game, she took the moral high ground. She's a kid, you expect her kind of to, because she's like just taught of black and white, right and wrong. But still, it was pretty good how they did it, and I really did like that car scene. How she was the first one to, well, not the first. I think Ben was, but she was like the first one to really say that. What if it's not abandoned? You know. Also, Clementine, I like how she's just in the farm. She's saying she's pretty optimistic about the farm, but and she doesn't realize anything's going on. So it once again shows she's a kid. She's not thinking what's going on. And she did bring us one of the most funniest lines ever in this whole episode.
Yeah, but don't lick it. It's gross.
Did you lick it?
I don't know.
Then came episode 3, where Clementine is having this mystery caller with the stranger, and you kind of just are shown a little clip that
You're
she's
back.
doing.
Ben found some stickers in a drawer, and I put them on my walkie.
Hey, Sweet Pea. That's neat. I'll find you in a minute.
But then once again, she shows you the stickers, and you're reminded she's a little girl. But really, she having those mystery things with the stranger was just something that was so off to me. Like, it actually changed her attitude, which most people didn't notice, that her attitude from episode 1 and 2 really changed in 3, and they didn't change until she started to have those mystery conversations with the stranger, and she began to start more focusing on herself rather than everybody else. Not that she was still caring about everybody else, but if you notice, like, during the whole episode 3, she's like, my parents, my parents, my parents, my parents. During episode 4, it even comes greater. She's like, my parents, my parents, my parents, my parents. So she's like all focused on her parents. Like episode 1 and 2, you can, granted they weren't near Savannah in those episodes, but episode 1 and 2, you kind of she doesn't even mention much of her parents other than like just being reminded about them. However, there was also another change in attitude that may have happened during episode 3 that other than the stranger's calls. The loss of Duck. If you notice, after Clementine finds out Duck gets bitten, she's focused on Duck almost the whole episode up until he dies. She's focused on him. She's always looking at him whether in the train, whether before the train, whether what's going on, and she's just caring about the group. She's focusing on Duck mostly though, because Duck is her friend. I actually thought these two were going to be like the Carl and Sophia of the Walking Dead game, but kind of sucks that they weren't. I could have seen Clementine right now like, Duck, will you be my boyfriend? No, but of course Clementine, being the dominant one in the thing, would be like, no, you are my boyfriend. Okay, that is decided. And then Duck would just go along with it being Duck. Okay, well, other than that, the train, other than Clementine worry about Duck, you don't really get much of her until after Duck. Though you do get Katja actually first kind of glimpse at, well, Katja kind of took interest from Clementine from the beginning, but you really do get that Katja noticed what Clementine was going through.
That little girl is a puzzle.
And it's just so true. Clementine was just so hard to figure out during anything. Like, is she a little kid? Is she this kid who knows more than an adult? Is she deep? Is she shallow? She just had so much going on for her at different moments of this game. And it was just so an amazing character development. And to watch her growth from episode to episode was just greatness. And you know what's strange? That Clementine could have not been in this game at all. They actually were iffy. They're 50-50 about putting her in this game. And I'm thinking to myself, how could you be 50-50 about a character that practically made the game? Without her in this thing, I don't think most people would have liked the game at all. Of course, I do like how during Duck's death, she realizes Duck is dying. She apparently knows more than Kenny at that moment that Duck is dying, okay? So, and then afterwards, she kind of becomes, she's still sad, but she kind of accepts and moves on, which once again shows that she's an adult kind of, even though she's a 9-year-old girl. She realizes that Duck's dead, she can't do anything about it, so she has to move on. Her next thing is we're going to Savannah, let's find her parents. Which once again, Lee can decide whether to tell her they're dead or alive, but by this time she won't believe him because of the stranger, I believe, because the stranger said he already has her parents. Now, once again, during the stranger's dialogue, you really get the fact that Clementine is a kid again, because she's gullible enough to believe that this guy has her parents, but she doesn't ask, why don't you put them on the radio? I mean, come on. That's the first thing I would have asked if somebody said, I have my parents. Let me talk to them. And I know he couldn't have come up with no good excuse why he wouldn't let her parents talk to them, to her. I mean, he keeps saying, I got your parents, but he doesn't let them talk. I mean, come on. If she was an adult, she would have figured that out. Once again, you're reminded, as the game likes to continue to remind you, that she is a little kid who sometimes acts like an adult. One thing about episode 3, because of the stranger's calls also, I think, and also because of the fact that she thought she would find her parents, I realized she starts to become openly defiant of Lee.
You do.
She also starts to want to go on adventures with him. During episode 1 and episode 2, Clementine is perfectly fine, and even the beginning of 3, Clementine is perfectly fine with Lee just going off by himself. But as of episode 3, Clementine almost refuses to let Lee go alone. Even in episode 4, how she sneaks up when they go to and they find Molly. I mean, she's like openly defiant of him. She doesn't listen to him anymore, like she used to at least. I mean, she still loves him and stuff, but she's starting to think. I still think it's because of what the stranger tells her. Like he's like, you got to find me no matter what Lee says. But once again, even during this scene, you're reminded that she's a kid again, and she's not going to shoot that gun, even though beforehand she was shooting the bottle. And you're trying to treat her like an adult, like Chuck says. You have to look at her as a living person, not a little girl. And what really is strange is how the defiance of Lee is kind of just Lee seems to not notice it. I mean, he noticed that she's not listening to him every step of the way, but it's like he should have noticed more that she was becoming more and more defiant the closer they got to Savannah. I also love how Krista didn't realize that Clementine wasn't your average little girl until they got to the mansion in Savannah.
Yeah, right. This time we're the cookies.
Just stay away from the gate. I'm gonna see about getting us inside the house.
I mean, the way she looks at Clementine is like, I can't believe that little girl is really putting two and two together that we're going to be the ones eating if those walkers come to get us. Also, I like Clementine at Crawford. Crawford, she was a very big help, not in what she did, but what I did like how she saved Molly, and it once again shows her, oh yes, she's not a kid. And then once again at Crawford, when she sits in her desk and she's like, this is like my old kindergarten school or wherever it was, first grade I think it was. She's like, we are reminded that she's once again a 9-year-old girl. And I tell you, this is what the game loves to do to us. Have her be treated like an adult, then a kid almost right afterwards, or vice versa. And I really love that aspect of the game. Telltale writers were really good keeping her as both the smart kid and the kid that still needs to be protected by you. Also, in Crawford, let's just make the point that this statement is one of the most truest statements ever said in this game.
I'm not leaving you with Ben. I'm leaving him with you. Understand?
I mean, people may have thought Lee was joking, but to me, I think Lee was being completely honest with this girl, because at this point, leaving her with Ben would make no sense. Leaving Ben with her makes complete and utter sense, especially since she saved Molly. Well, even though that didn't happen yet, but still, she's even a much straighter shot than Ben is. Okay? And during the whole this scene really showed how defiant Clementine had become, and how unfocused on the task she had become. What I didn't like was that Telltale didn't give the option for Lee to truthfully say that they were going to look for his parents rather than go in the boat, because I wanted to say that. I wanted to say, let's not go in the boat. Let's look for your parents. And I know that would have made the game really difficult to end, but the thing is that Clementine is getting influenced by this stranger who tells her, don't trust Lee. And then Lee tells her, can tell her, we're going to look for your parents, right? But then Lee will be like, no, we're not going to. So she's thinking, oh crap, this stranger is right about Lee. He doesn't care about finding my parents. And no matter what, that leads to her, of course, abandoning the group and going with the stranger, because with her, when it comes to her parents, she's vulnerable in that. And I really didn't like how Telltale didn't give you the option to simply be like, let's go find your parents. Or maybe Lee, I actually wanted Lee to be the one to decide, all right, Ben's going in the boat, I'm not. I wanted that to be an option too, but that's not talking about that now. Speaking of Ben, though, I do like how Clementine with Ben takes the moral high ground. And if it really makes sense with Clementine, because she's going to take the moral high ground and she's going to come to a logical conclusion with the moral high ground rather than what the others came to.
Ben's nice. He's my friend. We don't leave friends behind. That's my vote.
Now, the thing about that is that Clementine also made Krista think twice. Why? Because I think it was this. Krista was like, this little girl who Ben abandons on the side of the road, I'm not sure if she saw it, but if she did, can forgive him for that, and I can't forgive him for accidentally removing the garden tool between the doors which let the walkers in. What type of woman am I? That's what I thought Krista was thinking, because it's like, Clementine had every reason to hate Ben. She had more of a reason to hate Ben than the others, okay? Because Ben abandoned her on the side of the road after thinking about it. After thinking about it like, no, I'm not going to help her. And she still cared about Ben enough to say that, no, he's staying with us, when Krista, who Ben really actually helped during the whole thing, but did that one bad thing, and then she's like, no, Ben, you're staying here. And I'm like, okay, I was actually surprised when Krista said that. But let's go on to the last scene. Episode 5, let's just say, Clementine did cause Lee's death, and Kenny's death, inadvertently. And with the stranger thing, what I really love is how they kind of brought Clementine back to the Clementine she was in episode 1, clinging to Lee, once again after the realization
They're dead. They really are.
that her parents were gone. So she has Lee, and they bring her back to this little girl that we saw in episode 1 that would just cling to Lee forever, the one that wanted to just continually hold his hand and wanted him to just protect her. Because her parents are dead now, and the stranger obviously was lying, and Lee is now dying himself, so she's like trying to cling to Lee as a parent, but he's dying and she can't, so she's this once again this little helpless girl that we see, obviously, but then again, she beats up the security guard, so she's not a little helpless girl. So once again, they're like, she's an adult, she's a girl, she's an adult, she's a girl. Make up your mind, Telltale. Okay? But it was really a good writing on Clem's character, and her growth was just lovely. She was never the same little girl, except between maybe 3 and 4, obviously, since they were only a few, like, minutes apart. But other than that, she was never the same little girl that we saw episode per episode. She always had something about her that made her distinguishedly different from last episode, and I really liked that. And I am looking forward to seeing her in next season. I am not looking forward to playing with her as much because I think that she needs to remain that moral high ground character. And if you're playing as her, you could obviously not go with the moral high ground. But other than that, she was a great character. I can't believe Telltale was thinking of not putting her in the game. And thank you for watching this bio. Next time we'll be doing another character, obviously. Let's see if y'all can quander a guess. Other than that, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and God bless.